start. Okay, perfect. So are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let me share my screen. I do need to be able to share my screen.
You got it. Go ahead.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. My name is Ashley Policastro. I am a senior nutrition educator with the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. So it is my job to go around to different organizations, whether it be virtual like tonight or in person, and help educate people on nutrition and healthy eating. And today's lesson is called Cooking Matters at the Store Tour. So this is lesson 1 of a 4-part series that we're going to be doing every Monday night at 6 p.m. So we always start off with a non-discrimination statement. This is just basically states that we're not allowed to discriminate based on race, color, origin, sex, religious beliefs, or any other factors that may come across. So tonight's lesson, like I said, is called Cooking Matters at the Store. And this lesson really teaches us that healthy food doesn't always have to break the bank. So it really kind of goes to show you that you can still get those healthy foods and really stretch your food budgets, but still get those healthy meals. So here are just a few of the key points that we will be discussing tonight, as well as a bunch of others. So we're going to learn how to read food labels. We're going to learn what the difference between a whole grain and a refined grain is and how we determine that. We're going to talk about fresh versus frozen versus canned foods. And we're also going to talk about comparing some unit prices. So let's start. So first off, what is MyPlate? So the MyPlate, this is what replaced the MyPyramid. And this was designed by Michelle Obama and the USDA several years ago now. And this is a guide for healthy eating. So when we are putting the food on our plates, this is kind of what we want it to look like. So everything that you eat and drink, it does matter. And this is just kind of a reminder that we do want to get all 5 of those different food groups in because we want to get that variety. So we want to focus on that variety, amount, and all the different nutrition that we can have. Also not on this, but it's also important to note that we do want to try and choose foods and beverages with less saturated fats, less sodium, as well as less added sugars. And we're going to get into exactly what is an added sugar later on today. Now we're going to go through a lot of information today, but the best way to make good habits is to start with really small changes and then build yourself up into those healthier eating styles. So let's get started. So first up, we're going to discuss the nutrition facts label. So on the left, you'll see the original label, and then on the right, you'll see the new label. So in January of this year, all labels had to be switched over to this new style. So you really, by now, you should be seeing majority of the new labels. You may see an occasional label if they were produced prior to January of this year, but most of the time you'll see this new label. So we're going to go through all of the differences. First off, they made calories a lot bigger. Calories are what most people resonate with. So they wanted to make it big, bold, and a lot easier for people to see. So here we can see that this product has 230 calories. But they also increased the serving size of the serving size. So this is a little bit bigger as opposed to that old serving sizes. They also increase squeeze. So previously a product may have been half of a cup, and now it is 2/3 of a cup. So they did increase the actual serving size because they found people eat more than what is necessarily what the serving sizes are on packages. Now, our next change is probably one of my favorites. They added the difference between total sugars, and they also added sugars. So now it helps us distinguish. So the difference between added and natural sugars is easy. Natural sugars is anything that's going to be naturally produced. So our fruits, they're naturally sweet. So they're going to have some natural sugars within them. Now, our added sugars or anything that you manufacture is going to physically add into the product. So basically think white sugar being poured into your coffee, or if you're baking something, you're adding sugar. That's what an added sugar is. It's anything that a manufacturer adds into a product. And then this can be found under that total carbohydrate section. And then the last big change that they made is these nutrients down at the below. So previously we had vitamin A and vitamin C, and now we have potassium as well as vitamin D. They found that nutrients, vitamin A and vitamin C, are extremely rare for you to have a disease and be deficient in them. If you have a deficiency in vitamin C, it leads to a disease called scurvy, which has been extremely, extremely rare in the US, and there hasn't been a case in many, many decades. So they did add potassium. Now it's really important for you to know potassium, how much you're having, especially if you have like a heart or a kidney disease. So that's one of the things they found, so they included it on the label. Our next section that we're going to be talking about is grains. So what is a whole grain? So essentially a whole grain is going to contain all three parts of the grain. So it's going to have the entire part. It's not going to be broken down. And it's going to have a lot more nutrients. So let's look at a close-up picture. So there's three parts to the grain, and your whole grain is going to have all three parts. So that bran, your most outer layer, that's going to have a lot of fiber and a lot of other vitamins. So fiber is really important for our bodies because it helps keep you regular. It also helps keep you full. Fiber is going to act like a glue, and it's going to keep everything in your stomach together much longer, and it's not going to break down as fast. So you're going to feel full a lot longer. In the very, very center, we have our germ. Now, this germ has a lot of healthy fats, vitamins, and a lot of antioxidants, so it's really important. And then in the middle part that we have is our endosperm. Now, our whole grain is going to have all three parts. Our refined grain, or when a manufacturer takes it and breaks it down, it's only going to have that endosperm remaining. Now, the endosperm has some carbohydrates, it has some protein, vitamins, but a majority of your vitamins and minerals and a majority of the good parts and those nutrients are going to be found in that bran and that germ. The reason why manufacturers break things down and process them is because they'll typically last longer, but in doing that, they're removing a lot of those nutrients. So it's always better. We always like to say, make at least half of your grains into whole grains each day, because you have a lot more nutrients and vitamins and minerals. Now, what are some examples of whole grains? So we got some more common ones like oatmeal, quinoa, brown rice, corn, but we also got some more uncommon ones. So we have sorghum, bulgur, spelt, freckle. So those are just some examples, but let's learn how do we actually determine if our product is a whole grain or it isn't. And in order to do that, we got to be a whole grain detective. So in order to do this, we want to look at that nutrition facts label, and we want to specifically look at the ingredient list on the bottom. So we want to look at that very first ingredient. So we don't want to look at ingredient 2, 3, 4, 5. We only want to look at that very first ingredient. And we don't want to be looking at the claims that the front of the box makes. So for example, a box of crackers, they could say made with whole grains on the front. However, it could be ingredient maybe 5 or 6, and that means it won't be a whole grain. In order for it to be considered a whole grain, it has to be listed as that very first ingredient. So it's always important to make sure you're looking at that ingredient list and not really relying on the information on the front of the box. So we're going to go through a few examples and practice reading those ingredient lists. So first up, we have some country white bread. So if we look at that ingredient list, our first ingredient is enriched wheat flour. So when something is enriched, it means that it's been refined, and then they did add some nutrients back, so it's slightly healthier for us, but it's still not going to be the same as our whole grain bread. So this would not be considered a whole grain product. Our next product is multi-grain bread. And sometimes this product kind of trips people up because people think multi-grain, it must be a whole grain, when in reality, it really isn't. Just because something is a multi-grain, it means that there's multiple different types of grains involved in making the product, but it's not actually a whole grain. Same thing with the color of this bread. Some people think just because it's brown, it means it's a whole grain, when in reality, it's not. It just means that that flour is unbleached. So if we look at that first ingredient, we can see here again that this product is enriched wheat flour, which means it's not a whole grain. And then our last examples for breads is 100% whole wheat. So if we look at that ingredient list, we can see that whole wheat flour is our first ingredient, and this is going to be a whole grain. Typically, our whole grains or products are going to have more fiber as well as more protein as well. Now, this lesson is also really important when we're choosing cereals and other products for breakfast. So breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and we want to make sure we're having it every single day. So we do want to try and get those whole grains. That way they can fill us up throughout the day and keep us full and focused. So let's do a few examples of some cereals. So here, first up, we have an oat cereal, and we can see here that our product says whole grain oats as our first ingredient, which is great. So this is going to be a whole grain product. And ideally, we do want to have some whole grains within our breakfast. Our next product is a very sugary cereal, as we can see, because our first ingredient is sugar. So what this means is there is more sugar in this than there is of any other ingredient. So there's more sugar than there is of that corn flour blend or any other one. Now, if we look closely after corn flour blend, we can see that this product has yellow grain yellow corn flour, or whole grain yellow corn flour. So just because it says that doesn't actually mean that it is a whole grain product. It has to be that very first ingredient. So this is all about grains. And like I said, we do want to incorporate grains into all of our meals, especially breakfast, especially whole grains. Next, we're going to move on to our next aisle in the grocery store, and we're going to be talking about produce. Now, there's typically three different ways we can buy produce. We have fresh, we have frozen, and we have canned. Now, there's a lot of arguments, and there's a lot of research that's going, is one better than the next, when in reality, they're actually all the same. They're all going to be really good for you. They're all going to be healthy. And we're going to break each one down to kind of go through the pros and cons of each, because they do all have different seasons and they do have different times where some may be better than others. So fresh, these are going to be best when they're in season. You're typically going to get a greater variety. You can be able to touch, smell, and like I said, when they're in season, they're typically going to cost the least, especially if you're going to your local farmer's market. It's great because you can ask questions and you're going to get the freshest produce because it goes straight from the farmer to you. However, some cons when it comes to buying fresh is that it must be used quickly before going bad. If you don't store your fruits and vegetables properly, they can go to waste, which is, it's a waste. We don't want to be throwing out money. So we want to have a plan for what we're going to be doing with them, and we want to make sure we're storing them properly so that way they don't go to the garbage. Now, some cons with this is they can be expensive if they're not in season. So for example, if you want strawberries in maybe January or February, they're not going to be grown locally. It's just too cold in New Jersey. They're going to have to be grown in either California or Florida or somewhere where it's warm year round, and they're going to be shipped. So I've seen strawberries as high as $8 for a package, whereas in season they can be as low as like $2. So when it's not in season, it's definitely going to cost you more. And the reason for that is because it's going to cost those transportation costs. They have to ship them in from somewhere where it's warm. So that's going to increase your price a lot. Next up is frozen. So frozen produce, these are going to be grown when they're in season. So when they are most readily available, and they're going to be flash frozen. So even if you enjoy them up to 6 months later, they're still going to have all those vitamins and minerals. They're still going to have a lot of nutrients. And they're still going to be really good for you. So always try to consider those. They do typically cost less because they are so readily available, and there is very little prep required. So it's great. I know I love taking frozen fruit in the mornings. I can make a smoothie out of them. And it's like a meal on the go, especially when you're busy and don't really have time in the mornings. They are usually available year round, and there's usually a pretty good variety that is available. Some cons though is sometimes these have some added sodium or added sugar. So we always want to try and get something that's just that bland fruit. Or fruit or vegetable. We don't want to be getting a bunch of different, like ones that have different sauces or sugars, because that's going to increase your added sodium and sugar, but it's also going to increase the price that you pay because that manufacturer is putting some work into it. Now, some people do say there are some texture changes sometimes with frozen, but that's more of a personal choice. Now, a tip for this is when you're storing your frozen produce, you want to try and have your freezer set to 0 degrees Celsius, so that way they can have the longest shelf life. And lastly is cans. Cans typically get a bad rep, but they're still really good. So just like your frozen, they're going to be grown when they're in season, and then they're going to be preserved. So these cans, depending on the type of can that it is going to have a 2 to 4 year shelf life. And since they're so readily available, they're typically going to be a really cheap option for you. I know personally it's really great. There's such little prep required, and they're available year round. So I really like getting them. We do always recommend, though, if you are getting a canned, if you're getting a canned fruit, we always want to get it canned in 100% fruit juice or water. And if it's you're getting a vegetable, you want to try and get either no salt added or low sodium. And we're going to get into cans a little bit more on that next slide. Some changes or some cons that they may have is some people just don't like the taste of them, or they may have some added sodium or sugar, but just look at those labels. And like I said, either get low salt added or no sodium and get it canned in either water or high fructose corn syrup. So I just said canned and talking about no salt added and low sodium. So let's see exactly what that difference is between if I got a regular can of carrots and a no salt added can of carrots. So let's see that differences. First up, your price is going to be the same. They're both going to be $1.09. They're both going to be the exact same price. Your calories are going to be the same. They're each 30 per serving and 105 per container. The nutrients are going to be the same. So your protein is going to be the same. Your carbohydrates, all that is going to be the same. The difference is going to be your sodium. So on the right, we have 370, or I'm sorry, on the left, we have 370 milligrams per serving and almost 1,300 milligrams for that entire container. Now on the right, where our no salt added, we have 50 milligrams per serving and 175 for the whole container. So that's quite a huge difference and quite a big drastic change. So we do want to try and have that low sodium or that no salt added can, because it's an easy way to cut back our sodium. And then the last difference really is just the ingredients. One is going to have salt in it, one isn't. So whenever possible, we always do recommend getting that no salt added can, because it is a little bit better and we can watch that sodium. So our next topic that we're going to get into is unit pricing. So unit price is typically found on that shelf tag listed separately from our retail price. And it's going to be the price that you pay per unit. So it may be per unit, per ounce, per pounds. It's going to vary depending on the product that you have. And the way we get this is we take that retail price and then we divide it by that unit. So in this case, this is in ounces. So we would divide it by 14 ounces and we get that it's 16 cents per ounce. Now, this is really important to know how to do, especially if you want to compare different brands. So brand A is, I don't know, maybe $2 per package, but brand B might be $3. So to help us compare, it'll also help you compare different sizes. So is it really worth it to buy in bulk, or do you not necessarily for this product? Is it not worth it for you? So it's really great to compare different brands and different sizes when you know. And typically this will be done for you already. It's going to be in that top left-hand corner, and it's usually going to be in some bright color. So either orange or yellow. Sometimes I've seen pink. It depends on which store you go to. So let's see a few examples here. So here we have 3 different examples of carrots. We have whole carrots for 5 pounds, baby carrots with 1 pound, and frozen carrots with 16 ounces, which is equivalent to a pound. Now, for our whole carrots, we can see that these are 70 cents per pound. Whereas our baby carrots with 1 pound, those are $1.99. So not only since you're buying less, that is going to increase your price, but also the manufacturer had to put more work into this. So that the machine had to cut up those carrots and make them smaller. So that's going to increase your price. And then lastly, we have our frozen carrots, which are $1 per pound. So these are frozen, so that typically can cost less for us. So we see that these are $1 per pound. So ideally, our best bet money-wise would be that 5-pound bag for 70 cents per pound. Next up, we're going to be talking about our sugary beverages. So let's talk about fruit juice. So typically when you see a fruit juice, you're going to see two different types. You'll see either a juice cocktail or you'll see 100% fruit juice. We always recommend getting the 100% fruit juice. And this is why. So on our product on the right, this is the 100% mixed berry juice. But our product on the left, that cranberry cocktail, that's actually only 27% juice. So typically it's going to be somewhere in that 20 to 30% range. And that cocktail just means it's a lot of different ingredients added into it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% fruit juice. So let's look at those ingredient lists and let's see what their differences is. So we can see here on our juice cocktail, our main ingredients are filtered water and high fructose corn syrup. Whereas our 100% fruit juice is, as it states, it's 100% fruit juice. So we have apple juice, pear juice, grape juice, a lot of different juice types. We can also see that our product on the left has 8 grams worth of added sugar, whereas our 100% fruit juice, since it's all juice, has 0 grams worth of added sugar. So we always recommend getting that 100% fruit juice because it's going to be our best option. Next up is dairy. So let's see. So let's talk about cow's milk first. So when we talk about cow's milk, we'll typically have 4 different top choices: whole milk, 2%, 1%, and fat-free. Now, we always recommend getting either a low-fat or a non-fat milk, so that 1% or fat-free milk. Now, for kids in school, if they are getting a white milk, then they're going to be served a 1%, or if they're getting a chocolate or a strawberry or some flavored milk, they'll be getting a fat-free milk. Now, the big differences between these different milks is the fat percentages and that calories. So we can see here that all the nutrients are going to be the same. So our protein, our vitamin D, calcium, they're all going to be pretty similar no matter what type, but it's going to be our fats that are going to be the big difference, and which corresponds to our calories. So here we can see whole milk has 150 calories and 8 grams worth of fat, and then it slowly decreases with each type. 2% has 130 calories and 5 grams of fat. 1% has 3 grams of fat and 110 calories. And lastly, fat-free milk has 90 calories and 0 grams of fat, like it says, fat-free. Now, for infants, for babies under the age of 1, whole milk is good for them because that extra fat does help with brain development. But for everyone else over the age of 1, it doesn't help us. So we want to try and stick with that 1% or that fat-free milk. Now, there are a lot of different alternatives nowadays to cow's milk. We have almond milk, soy milk, coconut milk. There's a ton of different types that we could have. They're all going to be enriched with vitamin D and calcium, so they're all going to be really good for us. Something we do just want to note, though, if you are having one of those milk alternatives, just watch out for the sugar, especially with almond milk. A lot of times they like to sweeten it, which can add some extra calories and add some added sugars to it, which we do want to try and avoid. So our next category that we're going to be talking about is our proteins category. So whenever possible, we do always want to try and choose a lean protein, so a protein with less fat. So some good options of some lean proteins are some turkey, chicken, and those are some fishes. So those are going to be a great option. But let's go through some different ways of choosing our proteins. So all the way to the left, I have my ground beef. So here we can see that this is a 93% lean, 7% fat. So that means 7% of this product is fat. And typically the higher that lean percentage is, the more money it's going to cost. So here we can see that this lean is $5.99 per pound. Now, our product right to the right of that, we can see that this is an 80-20. So 80% lean, 20% fat. And that price difference drastically drops. So this is only $2.99 per pound. And the reason for that is because it's less fat, or it's more fat. Now, one thing that we can do to try and save some money is buy this lesser percentage, and then when you're cooking it, just drain off some of that fat. That way you're getting a little bit of a healthier meal, but you're still saving some money. Next up, we have our ground patties. Now, in this case, we have 85% lean, 15% fat. So not too much different than our previous product, but we can see here that that price drastically increased. And the reason for that, and the reason why this is $5.39 per pound, is because someone took it and shaped it into a patty form. So just by that manufacturer putting that little work into your product, that's going to drastically increase your price. So whenever possible, try and do that work yourself, and try to just shape it yourself, and you can save yourselves a lot of money. And then lastly, we have some ground turkey. So this is a 93% lean, 7% fat, but turkey is a naturally leaner meat, as well as it's naturally less expensive meat. So it's going to be a good option for you to have. And we can see here that this is only $3.99 per pound. So when we are choosing protein, we do want to get a variety. We do want to have a lot of different types, and we do want to try and choose those lean proteins whenever possible. So let's look at those health facts and those nutrition facts labels of the different products that we're having. So of our 93% lean, 7% fat, of both our ground beef and our ground turkey, pretty similar. Both have 8 grams worth of fat. We have 170 calories versus 160. So pretty similar, different in calories and fat percentage. But in our next product with our 80-20, we can see that there's a lot more fat, which means there's a little bit more calories. So what we want to do with that is, like I said, just drain it off, and we can reduce a lot of calories by a lot. So the next thing when it comes to buying proteins is to buy in whole or in bulk whenever possible. So here we can see that I have 2 different types of chicken. We have a whole chicken on the left, and we have some chicken breasts on the right. Now, whenever possible, do try to buy that whole chicken, just because when you are doing that, you do save a lot of money. Here we can see that you can get a 4.5 pound of chicken for only 99 cents per pound, which is really great. Whereas those chicken breasts, those are almost $5 per pound, and you only get 1.2 pounds. And the reason for this is because that manufacturer had to physically cut up the chicken, which is a lot of work. So they are going to increase your price. So whenever possible, do try and buy that whole chicken. You'll be able to save a lot of money. Now, some people just don't like to buy that whole chicken, and that's okay. Some people just won't use it, and it'll go to waste. Now, if this is your case, that's okay. What I always like to do is I always like to buy, if I'm buying those chicken breasts, buy them in bulk. So whenever they're on sale, I'll go buy a few packages and throw them in my freezer. Now, before I put them in my freezer, I do put them in individual Ziploc baggies. So whatever I need for that night. So maybe I need 2 or 3 pieces, and I'll put them in little bags. So that way, when I'm taking it out, I can just take out 1 bag and I don't have to defrost the whole thing. So whenever possible, do try to buy in whole or try and buy in bulk to get the best bang for your buck. Now, we also want to incorporate some seafood. So seafood is really important in our diet. We want to be trying to get seafood, at least try 3 servings of seafood each week. There's a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, and there's a lot of healthy nutrients and vitamins and minerals in seafood that we want to have. So here we can see that we can get fresh tilapia for about $6 per pound. We can get frozen tilapia for about $5 per pound. So both good options. We can also have canned fish, which is really good. So here we have canned tuna. It's typically going to be a really cheap alternative. It's going to be a really good option, and it's still going to be really nutritious for us. And there's still going to be a lot of different nutrients in that are necessary. Now, we do want to try and vary our proteins, like I said earlier. So not only do we want our meats and our seafoods, but we also want to include beans, lentils, eggs, peanut butter. Peanut butter is a great source of protein, different nuts and seeds, and different soy products, and maybe tofu. Tofu is a great option to have. It's like a sponge. It just soaks up all of those seasonings and all of those different flavors that you have into your meals. So we do really want to try and focus on the different types of proteins and the different varieties that we're getting. So that is our class for tonight, a little bit shorter one. So this is just, like I said earlier, this is called Cooking Matters at the Store Tour. So this was just really a guide to help you with healthy eating, what you should be looking out for, and some tips on shopping on a budget. Now, if you do go to the cookingmatters.org/tips website, there's going to be a lot of different information that I went over today, as well as a lot of other videos that you can be looking out for. So there's a video on comparing unit prices. There's a video comparing different herbs and spices that you can have, some kid-friendly snacks. So I definitely recommend, if you have time, giving that a look and seeing what there's on there. But that is it for tonight. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I can't see the feedback in the chat box, but if anyone does, go ahead, post them there and we will make sure to answer them. But that is it. Thank you so much and have an amazing night. Bye, everyone.